Okay, so I'm gonna do not even really a tutorial so much as it is a walkthrough or an explanation of what I think about whenever I make sounds. This is my first kind of lame recording setup, so I apologize in advance if you can't hear anything, if you hear things too loud. I am wearing swishy pants, so you might hear like ruffling and whatever else, but regardless. The point, hang on a sec. There. The point of this video is to give you some insight as to what is my approach, what are the kinds of things I think of, how long does it take, what kind of experiences am I having while this is going on, like what am I just kind of throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks? Like, am I just more persistent than some other people might be? Like, what is the process? So I'm going to go through that now. I'm recording this video with my camera phone because I have no other good recording device. So if it focuses in and out all bizarrely throughout the video, my apologies. Not a whole heck of a lot I can do about that, but hopefully you can see what you need to see to be able to get from this video what you need. This video could be 5 minutes, it could be an hour and 5 minutes. I have no idea. I'm just kind of going with the flow. So without stalling too much longer, let's go ahead and take a look at a sound. So the first sound actually that somebody wanted me to make was off of, let me see. It is Pink Floyd's Keep Talking. Now in this song, at the very introduction, let me play it real quickly here. All right, so kind of at the beginning, there's this reverse sounding, I almost call it like a sine sound. And when I say it's reverse, meaning like your typical envelope has an attack, it starts off loud and then fades out. Well, this one seems to have the opposite effect, and just listening to it again, like... Okay, so it kind of sounds like there's definitely a delay. I can't tell if it's a reverse delay or not, or if it's the actual sound itself that's reversed. So your attack envelope goes from low to high as opposed from high to low like it typically would. So I'm kind of getting that's the impression. So I'm thinking the way I'm going to approach this just by listening to it at first is I'm actually going to have a reverse attack so that it gets louder as opposed to like, or maybe just a really slow attack. I'm not sure yet. Because the attack starts, there's a definite starting volume, and it doesn't just go from 0 to like 127. It starts at like, I don't know, I'm guessing probably 60 or 70, and then fades in a little bit louder with a very abrupt cutoff. And so I kind of get the impression that just listening to it, the notes, it's probably like... probably something similar to that. So if you just listen, I kind of think it's like that. So it sounds like a soft sine of some kind, maybe just doing notes like that, and they may very well be held. So while they're being held, there's a specific attack, a specific release as well. So even though you might hold the note like this, it might just go doo-doo, and that's it. So it just goes you-doo, and I'm articulating with my mouth. But let me show you kind of how I'd approach it on the keyboard. So first things first, I'm just going to go into a blank user area. So in this case, I've got all of my D user bank cleared. So I'm going to just go to the first one. And this is my super awesome Wii U pokey pen thing. You probably can't see that in the video. That's okay, though. So first things first, when I play a note... All right, well, that's not even close. So what I'm going to do, I'm still going to use an AL1 on this one. When it comes to really specific things like articulations in terms of your ADSR and that kind of thing, I prefer AL1 just because it gives you a modicum of control that with a GUI, with some sort of interface to kind of show you what that looks like. So first things first, when I'm going through, assuming I'm just going to play it like, I'm going to have the sequence do most of the work with a delay on the end. I think that's how I'm going to approach it. So first things first, what I want to do is I want to adjust my Adsr. Okay, and right off the bat, I'm going to have my attack fade in. So I'm going to change this from 0 and have my starting value brought up here. So it's like, okay, so first things first, it's just going to get louder. So if you hear I'm playing, it goes. So that's clearly too much. So I'm going to drop this down so it sounds more of a fade in. Maybe even more than that. Yeah, so that's fine. Now I'm going to change the attack so that instead of going to 100, well, a couple things to think of here. So I'm going to listen to the sample again and just kind of directly compare and see, is this working towards the sound? So if I make a change, I'm always constantly asking myself, is this closer than it was before? Okay, so it's definitely closer already. So the next thing I need to do is I need to have it so that when we think of a reverse attack, I think of there as being very, very little release. So first things first, I'm going to drop this release right down to 0. And one of the kind of signature things that you can tell about, like on a digital synth, whenever something like this happens, is this popping noise right at the end. It almost sounds like a pop. We're so used to hearing release on natural instruments that the sudden absence of sound makes it sound almost like it's popping. So, and so that's kind of characteristic of that reverse sound effect almost, where you hear this inverted attack. So far. Okay, now next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to listen to the clip again. Again, I'm making a small change. I just want to see if it's even closer now. All right, so I think I'm heading in the right direction. It sounds fine. So my Adsr sounds okay. Next thing I'm going to do, and frequently I save it, so, you know, I'm sure I want to save. Actually, let me save it again. I want to name it too, just so I don't have to do this again. All right, so, and, whoops, what am I going to call it? I don't know, keep talking. I'm going to call it Wisps. And then PF for Pink Floyd. And yeah, sounds good. Now, sometimes, and this is something that I'd recommend, and I'm just thinking about this now, so I'm going to kind of explain this now. If you get to a point when you're programming something and you think it's close, and you don't want to make changes, or you want to make changes without worrying about, you know, am I going to screw this up and then I can't get back to it, just save it to a new bank, or not to a new bank, but a new location. So, like, I'm not, just for purely demonstration purposes, I might go, I'm going to write program, I'm going to use program 1 as my working program, but I'll use actually, I guess it's bank D000. I'll use this keep talking right here as my workable bank, or workable program. This is the one that I'm going to keep coming back to. And then I'm going to have backups in these other locations. So they could be variations. Maybe you like a sound, it's not the sound that your goal is, but it's a sound that you can potentially use anyway. So, now you've got variations. So there's no downside to it other than it takes up a little bit of space. But then if you save it to your hard drive, your external card, and so on, then, well, who cares? So yeah, there we go. So I'm just going to save this to the second spot, and I might rename it just PF like version 2. So if you have enough space, I think I'm getting pretty darn close to running out of space here, but I'm going to say V2. Yeah, see, I kind of had that suspicion. So I'm just going to call it PF2. And so this could be like my backup. It could be whatever. Yeah, so that's good. Now, I said I was going to use, D000 as my one that I'm actually editing. So to do that, I need to go back to it. There we go. And I'm going to go back into the editor. So the next thing, right away, so I've got this reverse kind of sound. Now that's all well and good. Problem that I have with that, I know the attack is still not quite right. I mean, it's time sensitive, meaning, the attack that I've got is just kind of a guess right now. I'm going to refine it later. The other thing is it doesn't sound like a wisp. This is very saw. It's very buzzy sounding. So that being said, I'm going to try another oscillator and see how it comes out. Now, something that you may want to consider doing is when you're listening to these clips, think about things like, does it sound like it has portamento on it? Because it could be a monophonic sound. In this case, it doesn't really sound like it. Now, it still could technically be. I don't know for sure. I'm going with polyphonic. It's probably easier that way. And this is where things like doing research would come in handy. They might be using a synth on this particular track, on this particular album, that happens to be like a Moog or something like that could be just a monophonic synth. And so you might have multiple oscillators, but you can only play one out at a time. Well, then, you might have to consider, like, by doing that research, you would know that in advance so you can be more accurate. Since I don't know that, and this is my first time just kind of throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks, I'm just going to go with this. So I'm going to change the oscillator, and I'm going to change the oscillator from the saw pulse. There is no sine, technically, so there's no sine oscillator. What I am going to use, though, instead of saw pulse, is I'm going to try a triangle and see if I can get something close with that, because that sounds like it might be a little bit better. So, and I'm going to do this for both oscillator 1 and 2. Well, I can't technically do it with 2, so I'm just going to throw this on saw here. Okay, it's a little softer sounding. And to get it even softer, I'm going to start adding filters. So right away, I'm going to throw a filter on, and I'm a big fan of this 24 dB, like the 4-pole filter. It has a sharper cutoff, so it's just, I don't know, not more analog, but yeah. So other thing to note is, I'm playing this an octave lower, so it should technically be up here. So now I've made some changes. I'm going to save it. And now I'm going to go back and listen to it again. So here we go. Let's play it. So I'm having a hard time hearing it because there's a lot of other sonic events happening in the background. I'm a big fan of finding isolated backing tracks and things like that where, if you've got a keyboard sound that's smack in the middle of this big band and you're trying to figure out what the heck did they play, well, sometimes by getting isolated or stem tracks, you can find out just what the keyboards are doing to make sure your parts are more accurate. In this case, since it's an intro sound, I'm hearing about 4 or 5 different things all simultaneously. Like there's a noise generator. Hang on. So there's that sound that goes choo, choo. It sounds like a noise generator. So I've got the guitars. I'm hearing, could be a Taurus bass on the left hand, or either that or your pedal, but it could be just an overdub. So you've got that slow moving filter right. Here, let me. That kind of sound. So you've got something like that happening too, right? So I really get the impression that this sound is kind of double triggered. So it's going did did, right? So if I'm going, this definitely needs to be softer. So let me bring this back down here. I think it was at like 40 something before. Yeah, that's close enough. I'll just do a quick save. By the way, just quick reference, how am I getting this keyboard to save is I'm hitting 0 and enter at the same time. This is just your kind of your right program thing. I use that frequently instead of, you know, constantly clicking the menu up here. It's just this quick save, and then you can go, yep, all right, good. It's like keyboard shortcuts in Microsoft Word or something, you know, sometimes they're handy to know. Anyway, I digress. Let's listen to the sound again. Okay, so I can't decide if it's double triggered. So if it's going, and when I say double triggered, all I mean is that the envelope opens, or the driver, amp driver, this opens and closes. When I say opens and closes, it's technically going up and then dropping and then opening up again and dropping once again with that delay. So let me see if I can kind of show you what I mean by that. So first off, I want to get rid of the curve. I want it to be linear on all of them, and I can adjust it later if I feel so inclined. Release is irrelevant because it's just a straight drop off, but whatever. And so what I'm trying to get is that I want it to basically have 2 peaks so that it goes up and down. Now that's the right idea. It's just too slow. So I'm going to speed that up a little bit. Whoops. We'll do that. Okay, let's see how that sounds. Yeah, it's on the right path. Okay, so that's cool. I'm getting there. So one thing that I'm noticing is the first peak and the second peak. This is just purely how it played out. The first peak is louder than the second peak. What I'm listening for right now, whenever I listen to the actual sound, is the second peak quieter than the first one. So is the amplitude the same in both hits? Like the did, are they the same, or is it, you know, this would be a good indication. Is it actually a delay or not? And then when I listen in the delay, do I hear 2 hits in the delay as well? So this is what I'm listening for right now. Now here's a trick that I tend to use, is I'll often put something on an infinite loop. So I use an old school piece of software called Cool Edit Pro. Yeah, it's Cool Edit Pro 2.1. So, you know, we're talking hardcore, you know, early 2000 software, but I just find it really dead simple to use, and it's fast for my workflow process. So what I'll often do is I'll put if I'm having a hard time hearing something, I'll put an isolated part on repeat and just let it go. So just for an example, let me see. Okay, so I'm hearing a distinct this. So when I put it on the infinite loop, I'm hearing. Now the loop is faster, so that indicates to me that my attack is too slow. So I need to bring it up here, and that's too fast. No. Now let me compare that to the loop. All right, well, let's see how close that is to the real thing now. And I'm going to unloop it here and just play it normally. No, it's still too fast, so let's slow it down. Okay. Now, it sounds like this next one, so this peak should be fading out. So I need to bring up my sustain level there is okay. Let's try and make these kind of even here. Okay, that sounds a whole lot better to me. All right. Okay, so in terms of the overall characteristic of the sound, I think that's pretty darn close. I am going to go back and kind of mess with how it sounds in terms of, you know, the actual oscillator and the filter and that kind of thing. But the characteristic of the sound, I think, is there. And then I'll try and play along with it, right? Okay, no, the second one's definitely lower. The speed, I think, is okay. But what I mean in terms of this is just where its sustain happens. It could even be less than that. It's more subtle. Okay, so that sounds like it could be pretty good. Let me try it here. Okay. Now, what's definitely happening is there is a ton of delay on it or not even delay, echo in this case, I think. The delay I'm doing manually by doing this. So I've kind of manually done the delay here, and it could be done differently. This is just kind of how I am thinking as, you know, if I were to cover this song, how would I want it to behave under my fingers when I'm playing? And I like the consistency of having something that matches the studio album. You could assign a delay instead to do the exact same thing that I'm doing. You're relying on an effect, but then the effect allows you to control your tap tempo. So you could assign the delay to a tap tempo and then have it synchronized to like a click track or however fast your band is playing it and that kind of thing. Because it doesn't sound like there's a whole lot of dependency on the tempo at this point. I'm totally fine with that. Okay, so save time. Whoops. I think I hit the wrong button. I managed to do something here. Yeah, it looks like it was maybe around there. I hit 0 instead of enter. That's what happened. There. All right, yeah, good enough. There, that's what I was trying to do, but I hit 0 instead. All right, good. So now that I've got that part done, I need to go back to the oscillator and let's figure out why the heck it doesn't exactly sound like a flute-ish. I would say whistle is probably more accurate. So it has kind of more of a round shape to it. Saw is buzzy. Pulse might be a little bit better. Okay, so just that in itself, if you compare, I'll play this and then I'll play it on the keyboard. Okay, so that's already sounding way better. Now, this is the part that I'm just gonna save this again. And we'll go, yeah, I'm gonna save. This is the point where I'd say, you know, I'm pretty close. I could even go to the effects right now and start doing the effects section. I prefer not to, though. I want to make sure that I can get the closest sound as close as possible before doing any effects, right? Because what can happen is you can put on an effect and then your sound depends on the effect. So that if for something, you know, some reason, not that that's wrong so much as it is, it's the thought process of crap in and crap out. I mean, that's how effects work, is if you put junk into them, you're going to get junk out of them. And anybody who's kind of familiar with what's going on in the effects section is going to go, well, the sound itself is poorly programmed and the effects are just replicating that. So what I'd rather do is make sure I have the fundamental of the sound complete, and then do the effects only after. So let's give that a try. So right here, sounds pretty close. And actually, I would be tempted to say this is actually probably almost done, except I'm that kind of guy that wants to experiment. So I'm thinking, well, what happens if I take the pulse width, 50, so pulse and a square are actually the same thing, except the pulse width is telling you, let me show you, let me see if I can give you an example. If we look at an LFO and I change this to a square, okay, so you'll notice 50% is up and 50% is down. Well, this is literally a square wave. This is how the square waveform works. A pulse is the exact same thing, except what you're doing is you're changing where this line happens. So, for example, a pulse that's 33%, well, instead of being halfway here, the pulse would look like this. It would be 33% over, then down the rest of the way, and then back up. And so when you have a pulse that's 50, it's the same as a square. If you have a pulse that's 70, and then, so there's these ratios that you can do. Anyway, I'm just kind of demonstrating with LFO. But let me go back to here. So when I'm talking about pulse width, I'm saying how long does the pulse last, purely from an electronics perspective. So if I were to drop this down to 25, this means the pulse is on for 25% of the time and off from from a purely electrical perspective on a classic analog synth. And what happens is this will become a little bit less round and a little bit more buzzy sounding. So let me show you what I mean. So you can hear it's kind of round here. If I put it to either of the sides, notice how it gets a little bit kind of sharper. And then 0 means it's off. So I'm hearing just pure triangle. This is purely on. Same thing. It's you're getting 100% signal 100% of the time, as opposed to signal, let's say in this case, 68% of the time. Okay, so this pulse width will allow me to shape the character of the sound. So if that, right at 50, if it doesn't quite fit, and it is pretty close, especially when I put some effects on, but there's some harmonic content that I'm not hearing. So I might go, and I'm like, well, no, that's not quite right. That's too buzzy. Like, I don't even need to listen to the sound. It's getting further away, right? Now this is definitely getting closer. Okay, I feel like this is probably better. Now, there is one other thing that's bothering me. I'm going to save this real quick. One thing that's bothering me is I have to go back to this. There's something weird going on where it's like it's not fading in entirely. So I'm going to see what happens if I put the start point right down to 0. So it's literally coming from nothing. And I think that's going to do it. All right, so that sounds pretty close. All right. So, at this point, I feel like it's close. I feel like it's probably just about there. So I'm going to put it down here. again as a backup. And we'll call it number 3. Now, keeping in mind that, you know, as long as we don't make any changes, the first one and the third one here are going to be the same. But just listen to where we came from now. So if I go back up to where we kind of started and made our first backup, down to this, and that's actually what we're working with now. I'm thinking, okay, that sounds good. Next thing I want to do is let's add our effects. So I know that it's definitely got some sort of, let me see here, some sort of, not a delay, it's a verb, and I'm going to go with the oververb. It's a real popular one that I've seen done or seen used in a lot of, you know, kind of pro Kronos stuff. I mean, all of their samples or all of their effects are great, but except for the guitar cabinet stuff. If you put a real guitar through this, it doesn't sound that good. But anyway, I digress. Okay, so you'll notice the character of the sound has changed quite a bit. It could be that there's EQ on the actual effect itself, so I'm gonna take a look at that. Okay, so let me see. Okay, that's not that thick, but it's definitely changing some element of the sound. So I'm going to listen to the actual recording again and kind of compare. Okay, so something that I'm noticing is, and forgive my lack of expression on this one, the oscillator sounds too hard. So even after adding this effect, and I'm gonna boost it up. I'm gonna see if we can make it like more wet versus dry and see if that makes a difference. So I'm at 50-50. No, so making it just wetter doesn't help. So I know that's not it. I mean, there's definitely some verb there, yeah. Now, I also can tell that there's definitely a delay, and so the part that's interesting about this is what you may not be able to hear unless you're wearing headphones or you have like good monitors, is that it sounds like it's panning too. So this is just something that I'm noticing from the effects perspective. So what I'll probably do is I'll probably actually put a delay on this first. So here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this verb and move it down. So I'm going to copy this insert effect. Actually, there is a way to do this somehow. Hang on. Yeah, swap it. So I'm going to bring it from 1 and put it in 2. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want the first effect in my chain to actually be a delay. And I want it to be a stereo delay. I want it to be a multi-tap delay. And what I want to happen, maybe not that much, what I want to happen is I want the original sound to be in the right channel. So I'm going to almost pan it totally right. And then have the tap happen in the left channel. I'm going to figure that out in a minute though, because I still have, I mean, it's certainly getting much closer if you kind of compare. But, okay, so that's kind of busy, right? So I'll have to kind of fiddle fart with the multi-tap delay later. I'm just going to turn it off for the time being because I have a different problem right now, and I need to go back to my my oscillators and figure out why is it still sounding really kind of harsh. There's something about it it's too I don't know if it's too buzzy or something, but I'm gonna try and see what happens when we change this too. Okay, now that's real kind of attacky. I feel like we're making progress though. It sounds better if I just kind of mess with this. Yeah, see, there's a lot of attack, so I'm going to drop the edge down. Okay, that actually seems to help a little bit. And what happens if I put sync on? I mean, I don't want any amount. Let's see. Okay, so that kind of makes it a little bit softer, a little bit thinner. Brings out some different harmonic content. Actually, I almost like that. But I can hear aliasing. I don't know if you can hear that kind of overtone. Yeah, no, I don't want that. No, I hear that aliasing. I don't like it. I'm getting rid of that. All right. Now I do have a choice of trying to change the ring mod though. Well, that's not really the same thing though. That comes down to here, so we could see what happens. Oh, wait a second. Okay, it's really aggressive right now, but because of all of our channels are way up in terms of volume, so let me try and drop these down. Okay, actually, I kind of think that's... I think that's better, but let me compare. Okay, that's definitely better. I want to go back to the filter and just... Now that we've made some changes, I want to see what happens if we open it or not. Okay. Now, that clicking, that pop at the very end of the sound, I don't actually know that it's there anymore. now that you kind of, and this is what happens is you eventually get blinders on. I'm just going to put a little bit of release. Yeah, so we've still got this pop. Let me just kind of soften it a bit. Okay, this is better. This makes it softer. And the sound, I think, is getting almost right there. Like I get the feeling that that's right. So intuitively speaking, it was too harsh. It was too clicky, too poppy. I don't know how to explain it any better than that. So by making these less rigid, so listen to the sound difference. There's a definite rhythmic pop,